The Meet the Press series, organized by the Ministry of Information, is an important platform for critical state players to lay before the citizenry, through the media, certain key policies and actions of the government which are of supreme importance and concern to the development of the country and the citizenry. We are honored to have with us representatives from the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, who are here today to share with Ghanaians through the media the successes, key milestones, and the way forward for this key ministry.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I, the captain, on behalf of the co-pilot, Mrs. Patricia Piaget, and the crew members, most of them are here. You see, MESTI, the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, was created to promote science and technology and their application to national development. We create a platform for innovation because basically no nation can develop without the capacity to do things for themselves. And I've said it time and again that the poverty gap is a technology gap. The whole world is driven by technology, and we are in a knowledge-based, technology-driven world where everything that we do, transportation, environment, water, and everything else that we do is driven by technology. And that is what we are about. And we are supposed to do this in a sustainable manner, maintaining a clean environment. We are also to plan human settlement so that with that we'll be able to know where we reside, where we want to site our industries, and where we want to site our recreational areas, and also, more importantly, where we live open so that we'll be able to fight flooding and other things. These are our agencies. First of all, we have the Council for Industrial Research with 13 institutes. Apart from the headquarters, we have Animal Research Institute, the Building and Roads Research Institute in Kumasi, Crops Research in Kumasi, Forestry Research Institute in Kumasi, Food Research in Accra, Institute of Industrial Research also in Accra, INSTI, that is the Institute for Scientific and Technological Information. This was, until a few months ago, or last year, a printing house, printing material for the rest of the institutes. But there are changes that are happening in that institute, and we'll get more of that later on. Then we have the Oil Palm Research Institute, then Plant Genetics Resource Institute. This is a very important institute indeed. That is where we keep our germplasm, all the seeds and tubers that some of you may not even know are kept in that institute in Chebi or Bunso. And they have their own challenges, such as power. You know, this is an institute that does not generate any income, but they are supposed to pay their power so that they can keep the seeds for us, so that in terms of farming, in terms of disaster, we still can get seeds to plant. Then we have the Savannah Agricultural Research Institute, SARI, in the north, the Soil Research Institute in Kwadaso, Kumasi, and then STEPRI, the Science and Technology Research Institute here in Accra, Water Research Institute in Accra. Then we have the EPA in Accra, Land Use and Special Planning Authority, LOSPA. This was the former town planning, town and country planning. And it's becoming a little bit more complex. The headquarters is called LOSPA, Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority. The district levels are under local government authority. And then we have National Biosafety Authority. That's a very important institution indeed. And then finally, we have the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, and then Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, the mother of all the things in Kwabena. Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology does not work alone. More or less, we are supposed to coordinate the activities of all the other ministries, making sure that they employ science and technology in everything that they do. So I've listed a few of the ministries that we deal with. For example, Ministry of Education, we are working closely with them in the development of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And then we have TVET, the Technical Vocational Education and Training, and of course, CODVET. This is very important to us. And in the exhibition, you saw something from INSTI. That is where we are transforming things. And we are linking up with the Ghana Robotics Association, teaching students in the second circuit institutions the use of robotics so that we can do well. And some of the students are doing well. In international competition, Ghana, one school in Ghana has been on top. We are also working closely with the Ministry of Communication in the development of ICT and digitization, cybersecurity, and so on. We are working closely with the Ministry of Transport. They want to introduce CNG-powered buses, that is compressed natural gas-powered buses. And we are very much interested in that technology. And so recently on my trip to Korea, I went to the areas where these things are going to be made. And then we also work closely with Ministry of Industry, as you can imagine, when we are going to promote the establishment of industrial parks, because we believe that without these things, we will not get far. Again, Ministry of Agriculture, we are working closely with it, and in terms of cross research, food research, and so on. And then the development of seeds. I'll come to that later on. Last year and this year, the Savannah Agricultural Research Institute has developed seeds, foundation seeds that are going to be multiplied for our Planting for Food and Jobs program. And then we also work closely with the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources in the areas of recycling, landfills, and water purification. And then roads and highways. And now we have developed a technology that will use waste plastic and others to create or manufacture pavement stones, and also to find substitute for bitumen that can be used in road construction. And again, you saw in the exhibition that CSIR, Building and Roads Research Institute, has developed pozzolana cement that can be used in all areas of construction, including road construction. And then we also work with Ministry of Energy, because we are interested in renewable energy, the use of biomass in power production, solar energy, wind, and the area of waste to energy. Local government, and we work with them in waste management, lands and natural resources, mining permits, and of course, the almighty Galamsey. Ministry of Works and Housing, in the area of fraud prevention, we are there with them. And someone may ask, we also work closely with the Attorney General's Department. In actual fact, we are in the process of developing the Plant Breeders Bill, and that is championed by the Attorney General. This is a bill that will help scientists work so that they can get their intellectual property rights when they develop new breed of plants or animals. That will help the scientists, the farmers, and the nation at large. And of course, Ministry of Health. So we also have our international partners. WASCA, that is the West African Science Service Center on Climate Change and Adapted Land Use. And 10 countries in West Africa are involved. These are institutions where scientists are trained in areas that help us to combat climate change. The rest are there: International Food Policy Research Institute, International Water Management Institute, and so on. And all these things, these institutes are housed, or they are on the compound of CSIR, and they all are treated as diplomats, and they have diplomatic immunity. That doesn't mean that mercy, we are setting up embassies. No. But because of the nature of their work, they require some diplomatic assistance, just as some military people do when they visit us. What did we find when we came in? We are not saying that everything was bad, but things were not in good shape. We all know the state of our environment, the littering, the indiscriminate disposal of waste, gas explosion here and there, and the Galamsey problem. And you know that in our country, only about 17% of people, even in Accra, have access to any form of waste management system. And therefore, we have a lot of ground to cover. We have problems with human settlement. Although planning has been done, we know exactly what to do, but we have encroached on all the water bodies, we have encroached on all the ponds and the retention areas, so that flooding is rampant, even at the slightest rainfall. Of course, in science and technology, we know that we have a very weak science infrastructure. What do I mean by that? If someone has an idea to create something, you are hampered. Now, let's take Apostle Joseph as an example. This is a very important person. He has a lot of ideas. He wants to produce vehicles. But the average vehicle manufacturer will need about 300, 400 suppliers. Somebody who will supply tires, tire rod, all the components of the vehicle. In Ghana, you will not find 2 or 3 companies that can supply any component of a vehicle. So if you want to produce vehicles, you are in trouble. And you cannot produce all the parts in Ghana. Therefore, you have to rely on suppliers from outside. And that takes time and effort. So if we improve our science and technology infrastructure, it will take time. And that is why I'm excited about the present free SHS system, the introduction of TVET, and so on, so that people can be tutored in these things. And then later on, as we shall see, we'll set up centers that will enable us to create things for ourselves, maybe CNC machine tool centers and foundries, so that we increase, strengthen the infrastructure that will be the base to help other manufacturers. And of course, we also saw that there was a low priority for science and technology in most areas. Now, even if we went to the technical institutions, technical schools that are supposed to be technical, over 75% of the students were reading subjects that had nothing to do with technical things. So again, to emphasize, there's little emphasis on STI for national development. Lack of intersectoral collaboration and weak collaboration to transform research output. And of course, lack of funding for research. And as you know, as of now, the nation spends about 0.25% of GDP on research. And that is not enough even to pay for the scientists. And so to make an impact, as others are doing in Asia, you have to devote at least 3%. But as a start, the president has pledged that he's going to devote 1% of GDP towards research and development. And that is a good thing in the short term. In the medium to long term, we expect that figure to go to about 2 to 2.5%. And so, low priority for STEM education, that is what we found. Things are changing now with the changes that are happening in the Ministry of Education. And then there was lack of policy in the area of science, technology, and innovation. That's what we saw. And then the strategy and lack of focus in the application of technology. Next slide. So what have we done so far? Right now, we have drafted the National Science and Technology Policy. That is now with Cabinet. We have also drafted a paper that is about the Presidential Advisory Council. We think that there should be a council that should advise the president on things concerning science, technology, and innovation, because without that, we will not go far. All the nations that have made it have made effort to make science and technology important. We are also setting up what we call the GREAT Center at INSTI. That is why I'm saying that that institution is going to change. The GIG Center is the Ghana Innovation Research Center. And that will be a place where we will transition research output into industrial output. We'll come to the details later on. And then, of course, to fund research, we have established the STI Fund, and we hope that when the Research and Development Fund is established, we will get our share in that. And there are certain strategic areas that we are going to concentrate on. For example, fundraise. Fundraise will help us merge metals and mold them for our use. For example, in the area of road construction, you will notice that all the covers of the drains are imported. And this is something that can be done quite easily in this country. And then we are going to establish CNC machine tooling centers. That is computer numerical control machine tooling centers. We'll come to details later on if we have time. And of course, we're also interested in space exploration. Not because we want to shoot people into space, but because space is becoming very important these days. And then we also want to go into the area of battery storage. Now, if we look at in the next few years, battery technology is going to be very important. By 2019, from 2019 up to about 2030, a lot of the motor vehicles manufacturers are no longer going to produce internal combustion engines. They are going to go into electric cars. And if we look at solar energy, about 80% of the cost is due to storage system, that is batteries. The solar panels are becoming cheap. And so, but we have an added advantage in this country. Recently, the Minerals Commission announced that we have discovered lithium ore in Ghana. And lithium is the substance, all the batteries that we have in our phones and so on, and the commercial cars, electric cars are from lithium. So we believe that if we have this, we should take advantage of that, develop battery systems so that our solar energy production will become very low, and then we'll be able to produce batteries that can help us to power other things. So I've mentioned the Ghana Innovation and Research Center, and the SKA project, the Square Kilometer Array. Some of you noticed that Professor Adumako, who is here, and his colleagues, and STI Adelaide had worked for years on the Kuntunsi satellite project. This project was to convert the telecommunication satellite that we had there, the 32-meter diameter telecommunication satellite, into a functioning radio telescope. That was done in August. And this facility is allowing us to train scientists, astronomers, who are helping us understand the universe, the beginnings and the things that are happening in the universe, so that we can make meaningful input into the science of astronomy. And Ghana is the first country outside South Africa to be able to convert the telecommunication satellite into a radio astronomy telescope. And we are very proud indeed. And in developing the space issue, the president was encouraged by what happened in Koforidua, where 3 students developed a CubeSat and launched it into space last year. And so with that, we were encouraged. The president asked us to apply, put in a bid for something I'm going to tell you, because the African Union is going to set up a space agency. And so we got to know it at a very late stage. We put it in a bill, and we are in the process. There are 5 countries that have bid: Egypt, Ghana, Namibia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And we think we have a good chance. And so all of you, in your dealings with your friends, the press, when you meet your colleagues, say, Ghana, we are ready to host the African Space Center. That is the Square Kilometer Array. And the Square Kilometer Array is a system of telescopes, including what we have in Kuntunsi, that are going to be arranged in many parts of the world, in Europe, in Australia, in South Africa, so that when you aggregate the surface area of all these telescopes, they will be 1 kilometer. And that is a very big thing. With that sort of arrangement, one could peer into the far reaches of the universe, so we understand things like the black holes and how the universe forms. Again, at INSTI, we are going to introduce a high-performance computer center, and what we call a supercomputer. It is going to be done in stages. The first stage is happening in Kuntunsi, where we have installed a set of these supercomputers. The next one will be coming this year. It will be installed in INSTI. And this supercomputer will be made available to all educational institutions and all setups that process big data. With that, we will improve in our weather forecast, the education system will improve, and we will have the opportunity of training more scientists in the use of supercomputers. And that will put Ghana very far on the map of nations that understand computing. CSIR, as I told you earlier on, we have drafted the National Innovation, National Science and Technology Policy. You know, in Ghana, sometimes, if we don't have a policy, we may do things haphazardly. So we need a policy that will guide all of us, every ministry, all of us, as to how we are going to use science and technology to develop our nation. And I mentioned the Presidential Advisory Council that has been formed. We have suggested some names to the President. In an appropriate time, I think the President will make it known to Ghanaians, the people, the men and women who are going to advise him in advancing science and technology in this country. You saw some of these things, renewable energy. This is an area that I'm very much interested in. So last year, when I saw the industrial research going into this full-time, I was very happy that they even had a contract from WHO to produce 500 of these for certain communities in Ghana. And I believe that we'll be getting some more contracts so that we can expand this project. And these are very new, neat toilets with biodigested. So they convert the waste into biogas, methane. The smaller ones can be compressed into cylinders that can be used to cook. If we aggregate a lot of them, the bigger ones can be processed into purified into gases that can help us generate electricity. A bigger example of this is what is happening in Ashaman. There's a company called Safisana. And Ashaman generates about 150 tons of waste every day. And this company processes 30 tons of them, and they are able to produce methane gas to power a generator that produces 1.5 to 2 megawatts of electricity into the national grid. A byproduct of this process is compost that is helping agriculture. And the Industrial Research Institute is going in this direction so that we can help our people in the villages, we can help the car parks, churches, funeral grounds to use these toilets. And as you can see, we are using local materials, bamboo, and so on. Next slide. And this again from industrial research, where farmers can use relatively inexpensive solar system to irrigate their fields. And these days, things are digitalized, so you can sit at home and able to trigger your irrigation system from your mobile phone. And below there, they are also developing solar panels that can be used in drying things and also providing power for small-scale industries such as barbers, hairdressers, and so on. Next slide. This is what you see there, the mobile, foldable solar systems that can be used by small enterprises. Next slide. Now we come to industrial research. And here I will start from Savannah Agricultural Research Institute in Tamale. The guinea fowls are now home. And they are doing very well. This institute has developed several varieties of yam, maize, rice, and cocoyam, and developed processing techniques for coconut oil extraction, banana juice production, and cassava flour production. Next slide. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, we are involved. CSIR, the Savannah Agricultural Research Institute, is very much involved in the Planning for Food and Jobs program. Last year, we provided 8.3 metric tons of foundation seed. Foundations are seed that are given to other industries to produce the seeds that are used in planting. Last year, we produced 8.3 metric tons. 2018, CSIR is going to provide 60 metric tons of sorghum. Last year, we gave them 11.7 metric tons. This year, it's shooting up to 45 metric tons, and so on. Maize will move from 12.50 metric tons to 30 metric tons. And this was done with the Ministry of Agriculture, who more or less contracted this activity to Savannah Agricultural Research Institute. Planning for Food and Jobs, we are there. And this is food security. I will recommend, or I will suggest to everybody that if we have time and we go to Kumasi, visit the Crops Research Institute. Wonderful things are happening there. Now, they have developed varieties of rice, and this is the list. CSR or Boafo that will mature in maximum 130 days. Kantinka, CSR Date, Antije, Amopa, and Pumtio. These are all rice varieties that have been developed at the Crops Research Institute. And when it comes to food, you've seen them. And this institute is very important indeed. And as at now, Ghanaians have not taken advantage of what is happening there. If you go there, you'll be taken through a process that will allow you to decide on establishing some small-scale industry. If you want to produce pastries, yogurt, even mushroom kebab, you'll be advised. And this activity is going to be given a boost when we've set up our Ghana, the Innovation Research Commercialization Center at INSTI. There, we are going to take the burden from CSR, put people there who will take you through the process of transitioning from research into industrial production. And then we'll get in touch with the private sector and try to commercialize the thing that we produce. And we hope that in doing so, we'll help the researchers and business people in Ghana. So we have facilities for processing fruits, cassava, flour. And you know, Ghana, we are so blessed. We have a lot of tubers, yam, cassava, sweet potato, orange fresh sweet potato, and many others that can be processed into flour. And that flour can be blended with the flour that we know, so we can use that to bake bread, cake, and many other things. And we should take advantage of the output and move our nation forward. It will happen, and I know that is going to happen soon. Again, we have the technology to rear pigs in conditions that are hygienic. They will not smell, they are raised on sawdust, and with bacteria that are friendly, there will be no foul odor, and you will save on food and labor costs. And again, CSR has established the technology for us to detect the sexes of guinea fowl. I mean, even those experienced ones, if we come from the north and you say we have reared guinea fowl before, you find it extremely difficult to tell a male from a female. Dr. Dagura, I'm not, you know so. But now, CSIR has come out with a technology that will help us to determine the sexes of guinea fowl. So we'll be able to match them, and then they'll stay in Ghana and produce for us. So, and this will help farmers. so that when you go to buy guinea fowl, you don't go and buy 200 males and 1 female. This technology is very important. Again, CSIR has developed a technology that will help us smoke our fish in a short time in a very healthy manner, so that we reduce the concentration of aromatic hydrocarbons, things in the smoke that can cause diseases such as cancer. And so this improved fish smoking technology is also there. And we are also going to champion this through our industrialization center, so that people in industry who want to produce this on a commercial scale can come talk to us, and then our fish people will have a lot of work to do, and in an easy way. We are working on yam, and yam, we think that is a very, very important crop, tuber. And sometimes we confuse the difference between growth and development. Many times we have growth in the yam market. So our farmers, our hard-working farmers, produce a lot of yam, they are not bought, you get rotten, and we are in trouble. CSIR is developing a system that will help us to develop the yam industry. Growth is increased in size. Development is increased in complexity. That's the difference. And what I mean by that is that when we have the yam, we'll process it, we'll get a group of people to remove the cover, how do you call it, that system? Peel it, peel the yam, and the peelings can be processed into animal feed. When you get the yam itself, it can be sliced into chips that can be cleaned, vacuum packed, and sent on the way. So if we have a lot of these things, we have refrigerated trucks, you send the yam across to every corner of the nation. Meanwhile, the Industrial Research Institute and the Food Research Institute will be giving us equipment that will help us to process the yam or to fry it in a way. And again, it will be linked to the guinea fowl people who give us the meat, so that at some point we should be able to ban hunger from this nation. When we have yam processed this way, we have guinea fowl that is processed this way, then we can have cooking centers at every corner of this country, and people can buy yam in any form, fried, cooked, and guinea fowl meat, so that the cost of feeding ourselves will decrease. CSIR is in this area trying to move the nation in the right direction. Mushroom, I've mentioned it already, and cashew and soy milk production. Again, soya is very important to us. The milk is very important. We are also, as scientists, interested in the coat, the covering of the seed, the soya bean, because there's an enzyme in there called the soya bean peroxidase enzyme that can be processed and incorporated into kits for early detection of malaria. And so we are looking at the crops in a different way, in terms of food, in terms of health, in many ways, so that we can develop the industry, not grow it, and then we can create jobs for our people. It will take some time, but we'll get there. Atomic energy. You know, Ghana was one of the first countries, well, maybe a few countries in the 60s when we introduced atomic energy, a few countries to go into that technology. A few things happened and we lagged behind, but we are still there. And we had a 2 megawatt atomic core generator, which we used until a few years ago, and it has been decommissioned. That reactor core produced isotopes that were highly enriched uranium. And you know, in these days of terrorism and the nuclear material getting into the wrong hands, because Ghana has signed onto a treaty, we were bound by the treaty with the International Atomic Energy Agency to remove the core of that reactor, and which was done successfully. And here I must give full marks to our scientists at Atomic Energy. You know, they, more or less, the first country in Africa using African knowledge and skills to remove the core, keep it, and transport it to China. We did that with some help from the US and from the Chinese government. And in place of that highly enriched uranium, we have substituted it with a low enriched uranium so that we will not have any problems with any terror or any misuse of atomic waste. Apart from that, we have a very serious nuclear program. And again, we have gone very far. The Atomic Energy Agency is very happy with Ghana because we want to introduce solar energy, nuclear energy into the country. We know in future, we know that this country is going to develop and we need a lot of energy. So far, we have a mix of solar, of course, hydro, number one, solar and wind and biomass. But atomic energy is very important. The technology has become safer, and therefore we're going through the process. The first is over. We are now in the process where our friends in atomic energy will choose a site where the reactor will be sited. It takes time. From the inception to the development, it takes about 15 years before we can switch on the energy. We are in the right direction, and I'm very proud of what Ghana Atomic Energy is doing on behalf of this nation, and we should all be proud of it. And this is a process. This is the removal of the core of the reactor, which was done successfully last year, and it was transported. This is a nuclear power program. We've set up the Nuclear Regulatory Authority. This is very important indeed. Before we had this, GAIAC was doing things themselves. And you know, if we are the player, we cannot be the referee at the same time. So we're mandated by international convention to create another authority, Nuclear Regulatory Authority, so that they will regulate the activities of atomic energy in the area of the ionizing radiation, and then hospitals and others, let's say the telcos who are using non-ionizing radiation. And this is a function of the Nuclear Regulatory Authority. It is very important indeed. We talk about space science and what we are doing there, and what the president, he's given us very good leadership indeed, and sometimes he's the #1 champion of science, technology, and innovation. And he, last year when All Nation University was having his speak day, he insisted that he wanted to be there to encourage those young people who launched the CubeSat into space. We are putting a bid to host the African Union Space Agency. We think that if Africa should send any satellite into space or any person into space, Ghana is best positioned. We are in the center of the world, at the equator, and Meridian is not too far from us. And so if you want to send satellite into orbit, from the equator, you will get to the geostationary orbit quicker than at any other place in the world. And because we're also close to the sea, you know that all nations that go to space position their launch pads close to the sea, so that if something happens, you can jettison things into the sea. And so we think we are better positioned to do that. We are developing the human capital already for some years now. At our Ghana Space and Technology Institute, we are training people in the area of astronomy and in space science. So we are there. If we go to Kuntinsi and see the young scientists, the young men and women who are looking into space, capturing signals from far away, billions of light years away from Earth, and processing it so that we can understand what is happening, that is fascinating indeed. And we should be proud of what we are doing. And again, we also want to congratulate the people from All Nations University, Benjamin Bonsu and his friends, who shot that CubeSat into space. Next slide, please. This is atomic energy at the training session. We are here equipped to train other scientists from Africa and beyond in the area of state science and the area of atomic energy. Next slide. I talk about our collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture. 2 weeks ago, I was in Korea representing our dear nation Ghana, specifically CSIR, to sign an MOU with the Korean government, the Rural Development Administration. They have an institution called KOPIA, that is Korean Program for International Agriculture. They are coming to set up a research institute at CSIR, and that is going to help us develop seeds, develop things that will revolutionize agriculture indeed. And the MOU was signed recently, and I believe that pretty soon, MESTI, CSIR, Ministry of Agriculture will team up to make sure that this project works very well. Next slide. And this is, again, in Korea, where I had the opportunity to go to ETRI. This institution revolutionized Korea. That was where all the flat screen television that you are seeing screens were developed. They changed everything and made Samsung and others what they are. We had a chat with them, and soon after our return to Ghana, they wrote to us that they want to get one person from Ghana to be with them for 2 months, isn't it? 2 months. So the Director General of CSIR has given us a very intelligent young man from INSTI who will be going to Korea next month to spend 2 months at ETRI so that they will know the systems, and when he comes back, we'll know how to sharpen our things and move towards catching up with the rest of the world. Next slide. This is the Korean Institute of Machinery and Materials. The use of materials to create things. We were there to see things for ourselves. Next slide. This is a very important picture indeed, and it, we went to a city called Gumi. This is a city with 400,000 inhabitants. Accra has about 5 million. And there are 350 SMEs, small and medium-scale enterprises. 110,000 people are employed in that city. And the GDP of that one small city is $26.8 billion. That is more than half the GDP of Ghana. And this is technology in motion. And that is why the president is determined that to get there, we should educate every child. To get there, we should dwell on technical, vocational education and training so that our people will get the skills to change things. To get there, education has to be transformed so that we'll be able to transform our economy. So far, we have not changed the structure of our economy. Agriculture, sell the produce, and then we get our money and we live on. This is the Adam and Eve economy. We need to change that so that at least we can learn a few lessons from Noah because he transformed the wood into a ship and was able to add value to it, and with that he was able to save humanity. So it pays to add value to things. EPA is one of the most important institutions in this country. We have a few things we are doing. E-waste, and most of you know what is happening in Aboboshi. Pretty soon it will be a thing of the past. Right now, we have signed an agreement with the German government. We are going to set up an e-waste holding facility where we are going to buy the waste from the young men who burn the waste in Aboboshi at a price that is slightly more than what they will get after processing them in the crude way. This waste will be kept in a holding center. We are acquiring a land, I think in Teshi, Nungua, where the waste will be kept, and every now and then it will be auctioned to companies that will set up recycling plants in Ghana. This is very important. E-waste recycling is important. There is a company, a mining company in Sweden. They have stopped mining, and now they are recycling e-waste, and they are getting more gold, more platinum, more copper from the mining. What else do you want to do? Plastic waste. We all know the menace of plastic waste. It is a problem. And sometimes I'm told to ban plastics because plastic has been banned in Rwanda, in Kenya, in Cote d'Ivoire, and so on. Yes, it is a mess. But right now, without a policy, it will be difficult. So we have finished the zero draft of our plastic policy. It is going through the consultations. And pretty soon, we'll have a plastic policy that we can all rely on. But there's one problem. You know, we have polluted our water bodies through Galamsey. Apart from Afram and Oti, all the major rivers are polluted. Ankobra, Pra, Tano, Brim, Ofin, Blackwater, Whitewater, Redwater, they are all gone. And the sad thing is that most of these rivers do not originate from Ghana. Where they are coming from, they kept them clean for us to use. And when it gets here, we pollute them, not only for ourselves, but even for Cote d'Ivoire. So right now, with the way things are, water polluted, and people in the village not getting access to river water and so on, I will find it extremely difficult to ban plastics. When we are through with cleaning the water bodies, making sure they are clean, and people can even use them to bathe, then we can think about banning plastics. But it not be a wholesale ban. I'm not trying to go beyond ahead of the policy, but I think that it would be prudent to start with a ban of carrier bags, for example, so that when you go to the supermarket or go to the market to buy things, you can sew a cotton bag, or you can fold your akataso into a way that will help you keep things in it. So that is how we want to do. And then we are also working on Galamsey. I don't want to go into that because you know where we are now. And the environmental division at the headquarters is also working in the north with the WHO in the Sustainable Land and Water Management Project, increasing the farming activities in certain communities in the north. And that project has been very, very successful, to the extent that the World Bank is now prepared to scale it up so that a lot more communities will enjoy that facility. So it involves tree planting, it involves the creation of dams, and so on, protection of water bodies. As you know, Ghana has signed on to the Minamata Convention. That is a convention that bans the use of mercury. Minamata is a city in Japan, and some years back, people were dying from diseases that seemed to be strange to them. Research showed that the deaths were caused by diseases emanating from mercury poisoning. That is why the convention is named after Minamata. We have signed on to it, and Ghana is going to make sure that, to start with, we are going to eliminate the use of mercury in small-scale mining. Also, in medicine, some of the equipment, old blood pressure equipment, also have mercury. These things are going to be phased out and substituted with electronic devices. Another source of mercury pollution is the open burning of refuse. That is very important, probably more than Galamsey. So that is why the Ministry of Sanitation, local government, and our ministry, we are taking steps to make sure that we'll get incinerators that will help in the disposal of refuse. The open burning of refuse is very bad. We now have, in the EPA, one area that we are working hard is the management of our oil and gas industry. We have to get the policy that will guide you as to what to do when there's oil spillage or when there are complications in our production system. And this policy has been drafted and is going through the consultation. We have also drafted our national biodiversity policy. If we had a national biodiversity policy, we would not be having this problem with Galamsey. Biodiversity is a total sum of whatever we do, what we have in Ghana, our forests, our rivers, our soil, and so on, so that we can determine from that policy that we can do these activities in this area and others will be reserved for other things. The rate of destruction of the forest is alarming. Nobody even knows the rate. From the way we are going, if we don't take care, there will be no forest in Ghana in 50 years. And as I say all the time, the forests are very, very important to us. That is where we get all our food. So I say the forests are our supermarket. Everything that we use is from the forest. The forests are our lungs because the trees and the plants will produce the oxygen that we need to survive. And we breathe out carbon dioxide. And they will take the carbon dioxide and produce food and oxygen for us. Can you imagine? You know, let's say a human being, somebody is giving, who is giving you food and oxygen, and you kill it. And what will be the consequence? So anytime we are cutting down trees, destroying the forest, know that we are destroying our very lives. We are destroying the oxygen that we breathe and the food that we eat. Again, the forest is our pharmacy. So far, scientists have examined only 1%, less than 1% of the potential drugs that can be obtained from plants. But even that 1% gives us 25% of all the drugs that we use in the hospitals. And so, if we destroy the forest, we are destroying our very lives. Pretty soon, the children we are sponsoring through the free SHS program and will come later on with the knowledge and the skills that will allow them to exploit the potential of our forests. And when they come and there are no forests, we'll be doomed. So, again, we have the National Biosafety Policy, which is going on, and we have also ratified the Nagoya Protocol. And that will help us benefit from our biological resources. If somebody comes to Ghana and finds something, some drug in our forest, according to that protocol, whatever money is generated from it, we have a percentage. And I'm very happy that it's coming now and not years ago, because otherwise we'll be in trouble. We took the cocoa from somewhere, and now we are enjoying the benefits of cocoa. If that law was to apply to us, then we should be paying a lot of money to Equatorial Guinea. But the law is not going to take retrospective effect. Okay, so we have also, as you saw, we are regulating the use of pesticides in Ghana. It's absolutely important that we control, actually we stop using weedicide or herbicide in agriculture. Next slide. I think the time is running, so we have to go. This is one project that is taking place at Mesti, the Adaptation Fund, where we look at that river. That river is on the border between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. And where the red arrow is, that is Cote d'Ivoire. And where the land is degraded, it's all sandy, that is Ghana. So with this project, Adaptation Fund, we are trying to increase the vegetation along our river bodies so that they will not be silted and they can be used for good purposes. Next slide. Again, as I said, through the Adaptation Fund and the Sustainable Water Management Program, we are able to help close to 20,000 farmers in the north. We are managing forests and rehabilitating farmlands. And some of the communities are recorded there: Pudo, Chiana Hills, Sisara North, Sisara Central, coupon, and so on. Again, we are regulating the use of chemicals. For example, the PCBs that we use in our refrigerators, these are all going to be regulated by EPA. We are also interested in vehicular emission and air quality, as was demonstrated outside. Again, we were told that noise is becoming a problem. And sometimes you don't even know where to start. Noise is a problem. You know, if I had my way, noise in the lorry stations, those who are selling records and so on, they should use, as you see outside, you can go there, they should get a setup so you can listen to the thing with earphone, and then you can choose the music that you want. You can't disturb everybody because you want to buy some record. And again, I think in the house of worship, why is it not that the noise will be limited to the house of worship? So, like we are saying here, nobody hears what is happening when you're outside. And again, maybe from the mosque, why is it that time for prayer cannot be transmitted with text message or WhatsApp? So the Imam will send WhatsApp messages to everybody. Hi, it's time for worship, appear. And I think that will help to reduce the noise. But this may be controversial, but that is something that we can think about. Next slide. Next slide, please. I want to go quickly so that you we talk about this e-waste thing, where we are working with the Germans to create this holding center that can be used to sell e-waste to those who want to process it. Land Use and Special Planning Authority, this is a very important arm of our ministry. They plan where we can site human settlement, our factories, and so on. But by and large, Ghanaians disregard everything that they do. And the enforcement is the problem. Right now, if we go to the Ramsar site in Tema, it's all gone, Sakumono. If we look at the rivers in Accra, instead of leaving a buffer zone, we have brought almost to the edge of all the rivers. And this is not the doing of LASPA, but the doing of those who are not able to enforce the laws. Everything has been done. We have all the information. And LASPA, you know, has a system that can also address our streets and our homes. So they have the addressing system. So Ghana is now well poised in the addressing system. Biosafety is very important. And here, Mr. Okorie is looking at things for us. You know, people talk about GMO and so on, that this organization was set up to make sure that we don't have GMO that will destroy our health and our lives. People are concerned about the introduction of Terminator seeds in Ghana. This is not going to happen. These are seeds which you buy from big companies, and when you plant your seeds, you get your produce. But the seeds from what you get cannot be replanted. So you are forever dependent upon the companies that produce those seeds. CSI is not going to produce Terminator seeds. And I know Mr. Okorie, Biosafety Authority, is not going to let it happen. We are also looking at what is happening in the fisheries industry. Ghana allows the Akosombo strain of tilapia to be farmed in Ghana. But there are some farmers from Asia who have introduced another strain. The strain in Ghana will mature between 6 months and a year. But they have introduced a strain that can mature in 4 months. And that is causing problems for us. And so we know what is happening. And Biosafety has been alerted, and we are monitoring the situation closely with the Ministry of Aquaculture so that we contain this. This strain is such that those farmers require the use of high doses of antibiotics to fight streptococcal infection that attack the fingerlings, to the extent that some of the farmers lose about 80% of the fish even before they are 3 months old. And this is causing trouble. It's not only the loss of the fish, but an added complication is that the antibiotics they use in the water lake get into the lake and enters our water supply system. And you know that in our water purification system, we are not able to get rid of antibiotics, to the extent that a lot of people have antibiotics in them. We examined a group of people some years ago in Jamestown. And these were people who had not been sick for a long time. They've not taken antibiotics, but they still had some level of antibiotics in their blood. It means that they got the antibiotics from somewhere. And this is one of the reasons for the antimicrobial resistance that is plaguing the Ministry of Health. The Health Minister is working very hard to contain this antimicrobial resistance, not only in human beings, but also in veterinary. And therefore, you will see that what is happening in fish farming has the potential of affecting water purification and also the health of our people. And therefore, we are always on the alert. And that is why CSR is very important. All the agencies are working very hard, and sometimes we don't even appreciate what they do. And I believe that we need to help our institutions. Next slide. So we are on the lookout for GMOs, and we will not allow it to be introduced in Ghana. Next one. But see, there are people who shout that, oh, even where there's no GMO, they say there's GMO. But unknowingly, they are consuming GMO products, because some of the chicken that you eat that come from some countries in America are fed with soybean and maize that were produced using genetic modified material. And therefore, in a way, you are consuming GMO. And because you don't know, you don't shout. So 2018 and beyond, what are we going to do? As I said, we have established the Presidential Advisory Council on Science and Technology. We have done the studies on the establishment of machine tool centers, CNC machine tool centers, computer numerical control machine tool centers, where technicians, scientists will be trained as to how to use computer technology to manufacture tools, spare parts, and so on, that will help industrialists. Because, you see, if you produce anything, you need suppliers. If you produce, can I get the water? If you produce this, you will need somebody who will supply the bottle itself, somebody who will supply the cap, somebody who will supply the label, somebody. So at least, even producing this, we need about 3-4 suppliers. How much more a vehicle or an airplane that has hundreds of thousands of components? That is why we have to get that technology, because without that, we are not moving forward. So we are also going to, as I said, launch the supercomputer at INSTI and then in Kuntunsi. And again, I mentioned the use of waste plastic to create pavement stones. We are also going to help these young people, especially the one in Ashaman, what's the name, Nelson Watin, who has gone very far with that technology, to produce slabs that can be used in building low-cost houses for our people. We are also working with the Ministry of Roads and Highways, and we are in touch with DuPont, the big chemical factory, so we can use the plastic waste to create a substitute for bitumen, and that will last even more than bitumen itself. As I said, we have also signed an MOU with COPIA in the area of agriculture, and we are going to commission the GRIC Center, that center that will allow us to transition from research to industry in July this year. And we hope that we'll get people who will shepherd our scientists through research and development, through prototyping into industry. And this is very important. From research to industry, there's what we call the valley of death. And if we leave that to scientists, as we've done all these years, very little will come out. All the good things that you do will die in that valley. That is why we want to produce this center, and we work in close collaboration with the Ministry for Business Development, so that we'll be able to shepherd the startups and industries can be created. So this center will be located at INSTI, as I said. The renovation is on our way. It will be launched in July this year. And that will coincide with another very important thing that we are doing. We call it the SANS Granted Council Initiative. And Ghana is part of a group of 15 nations in Africa that is working in that direction. At an appropriate time, we'll talk more about that. Next one. So, what is the importance of this center that we are talking about? So it will help us to initiate the call for research and also select what we think will be of significance to our national development, and then fund the research and track the research and measure and evaluate as we go along and see its potential impact on our economy. The source of funding is what is listed there, GOG and so on. The next slide will tell you exactly what we want to do. Sometimes there's repetition of research in our educational institution. Somebody will do a research, it's funded, it's on a shelf, it's forgotten, there's no tracking, and after another year, a few years, somebody else will come again and go and do the same research without knowing that somebody had done it years before. This is going to stop with our tracking devices. And so with that, we're also going to see the relevance of research. We just don't do anything just for the sake of it. And then, as we said, we are going to police the status of the research from start to finish. And at some point, we should be able to find out whether new products have emanated from that research and what those products are. We'll also be able to see whether new firms have been established out of that research and the jobs created, and eventually the impact on our GDP. Now, when we are able to measure these things, then our citizens will understand why we want money for research. It is very important. We are not going to do research for the sake of it. We are going to monitor everything and police it. Next slide. I'm about to finish. This is some of the machines that we use at the CNC Machine Tool Center. In actual fact, years ago, I had such a center, Machine Tool Center, at the free zones. But we ran into difficulties, and I'm a doctor. I couldn't get people to take care of it, so we had to close down at some point. But these are the things that we were doing. Next slide. So we'll be able to manufacture some of these parts for the auto industry, for the mines, and many things. So if we get about 100 of these parts being manufactured in some areas, it should not be a difficulty Ghana producing water pumps, transformers, vehicles, and everything in between. This is where we want to go, so that we'll develop the capacity to do things for ourselves. Next slide. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to remind ourselves that environmental management is very important. That is good in our effort to develop. But it should be done in a way that will not destroy our water bodies. And as we pursue the Beyond Ghana agenda, we must adopt environmentally friendly practices and use science and technology in the way we do things. So I want to spend 2 minutes on this concept of Ghana Beyond Aid. If we look at, I have to spend maybe 2 minutes saying this. If we look at what is happening, if we don't examine things well, we may not know the signs of the times. And in our ministry, it is our duty to monitor the words and actions of the president so that we, as they relate to science and technology, as to national development, so we can articulate them before the people. Ghana Beyond Aid. It is just an elevation of what Nkrumah said on the eve of independence, that we are independent now, and we are going to prove to the rest of the world that the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. So, if we are capable of managing of our own affairs, then in our age, 60 years after, we should prove to the world that we can live beyond aid. So, you will see that in the development efforts of the government, the president has encapsulated bits and pieces of ideas of his predecessors. And if you don't watch it, you may not notice it. This is what Nkrumah said. And so that is Ghana Beyond Aid. And then Busia championed. No, it was Busia. Busia came and set up the Ministry for Rural Development. And Mr. Munufie was the minister at the time. So, if the president is saying that I am introducing certain measures, Northern Development Authority, Middle Belt, Southern Belt, these are measures that are to enhance our rural development. And so, you will see that there's an element of what Busia was saying, and President Akufo-Addo is enhancing it and giving a lot more meaning to what is being done. So, the decentralization of the district assemblies with the creation of the MMDCs, it's all steps in that direction. And again, you come to Kufuor Champon, and he introduced Operation Feed Yourself. So President Akufo-Addo is saying that, look, we don't only have to feed ourselves. We don't have to plant to feed ourselves, but we have to plant to feed ourselves and to create jobs. And job creation, not only in agriculture, but also producing the raw materials that we will need to feed our factories, that will feed into the one district, one factory. So you see the thread. And so this is an enhancement of Operation Feed Yourself. Our president is saying that it is not enough just to feed yourselves and create jobs for yourself and for the youth that are coming after you. President Rawlings said he hammered on probity and accountability. He said without truth, and he continues to say it, without truth, there can be no justice, and I agree with him. These are noble ideas, but without the legal and institutional framework, probity and accountability will just stay in the air. That is why it was of limited success. And now, President Akufo-Addo is saying, it's not enough. We need a legal framework, and therefore, it is important to create the Office of the Special Prosecutor so that probity and accountability will be meaningful, so that people will not be that corrupt. Because with this level of corruption, there's no way we can develop our nation. The money that we need for our research is fed into the corruption industry. And it is so serious in Africa that in some countries, about 75% of the GDP goes into the corruption industry. We cannot afford that now. So when the president introduced the Special Prosecutor Bill, he's giving meaning to probity and accountability in a way that a Democrat would do. And that will happen also as he introduced the Right to Information Bill. J.A. Kufuor transitioned us from near dictatorship into good governance using the rule of law. And that's very important. So you see the trend. He gave meaning to democracy. Some of you remember that if you read the Bible, if we go to the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 33 and verse 22, it is said that, for the Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. It is he who will save us. So the Bible there is talking about the Lord being our judge, judiciary, the Lord being our lawgiver, parliament, the Lord being our king, executive. It is he who saves us. What it is saying is that it is only God who can be a judge, lawgiver, and king at the same time and be fair to everybody. And therefore, J. Kufuor, what he said, what he did was divine. We have to make sure that the powers are separated. It's only God who can be fair if it's all three at the same time. If you give all these powers to one person or a group of persons, what happens is chaos. That is why revolutions don't last. And therefore, what J. Kufuor championed was divine. And our president has continued. He says he's in a hurry. Why is he saying that? Right now, there are 120 universities in Ghana, 20 of them public, the rest private. And each one of them is turning out hundreds of students every year into the job market. And the government is supposed to employ all of them. You cannot say no, he's the president. So he says he's in a hurry to create unemployment. He's in a hurry to educate people, children, free SHS, so that they can be prepared for the job market. Because as you know, a lot of the graduates that are coming out are not well prepared for the job market. And therefore, the introduction of TVET and these technical things are vital to our development. And so, what I'm trying to say is that let us look at our history and see a common thread, what each president is supposed to do. So, a TVET education, industrial parks, stimulus package for industry, these are all things that will help us understand the signs of the times. So, I say that the poverty gap is a technology gap. If we want to bridge this gap, we must adopt technology. We say that Ghana is well endowed. We have a lot of natural resources. But people, natural resources have no natural owners. The owners of those resources are the ones who have the technology, the skills, and the money to exploit it. So if you have all the gold on the world, and you have access to only maybe 10% of it, it doesn't belong to you. If you have oil and the majority of what you get doesn't belong to your citizens, certainly you cannot say that you are the owner of those resources. So our president is saying and is telling us, MESTI and our agencies, that we should help develop the skills and the knowledge that will help us to exploit our resources. The gold, the oil had been in Ghana since creation, but we didn't have the skills and the knowledge to find it. Somebody has to come using his money and skills to find it, and he's using his technology to exploit it. And that is why we are where we are. This has to change. We want to develop our country with technology, less pollution, and socially accountable to our people. These slides we prepared when I was in Kolebu, borrowed from one of my friends. Our vision of, because you see, if we haven't seen something before, we will not be able to do it. And this is what I think Ghana should look like. This is what I think Dambai should look like in future. Next one. What about Nkrumah Circle? You see, surprisingly, this was prepared 15 years ago. And now look at how Circle is. It is getting close to what we are seeing here, isn't it? I think we can do it. Next slide. What about Donkokrum? Wouldn't that be nice? Next slide. Or Kole Lagoon. What about Accra, Kumasi, Tamale Highway? Is it not possible? Don't we have cement? We have Barcelona cement. We have the skills. Building a road research, you are there. And there's nothing that we can do if we put our heads together and work hard. Next one. Oh, and this is me at a railway station in Germany. And I believe that pretty soon the trains will start running again. And the president is committed to that. My friend Joe Latte is working, Joe Garte is working very hard on that. And pretty soon, when we work at it, we'll be riding in trains that will be traveling at about 180 kilometers an hour. And in 1.5 hours to 2 hours, we'll be in Kumasi. I think, don't you believe that this can happen? I believe it. You see, it's not a joke. I mean, years ago, somebody told me it wasn't possible to do heart surgery in Ghana. It's very complex, but we made it possible. This is me, 2008. I was going to Enchi. And between Enchi and Adieso, I got stuck for 2 hours. And somebody pulled me out. And then I determined that one day, this is how the Enchi-Adieso road will become. 2022. And I'm going to show this slide to Kwesi Amoako. So we will change it to this state. Next slide. Yagaba. What if every house had solar panel? And we'll get there. Industrial research, Dr. Judy Mwati, we charge you to do that. Solar panels are becoming cheap. That is why I'm saying that we should develop the technology to develop batteries, storage systems. And then all this will be possible. We should work hard. Let's encourage our children and those who are coming to have dreams. Because you see, the president is in a hurry. He tells us. Because the young people of Ghana have dreams they can no longer afford to postpone. And we should know that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.